Okay, in answer to one of the viewers, I'm going to show how to do some an arrow animation on a diagram. Now, the way I'm going to be showing this here, this is going to be it. This type of animation is a lot easier in After Effects than it is in Premiere. But if you're editing in Premiere, here I'm just going to make a new project. Okay, if you're editing in Premiere, one thing I do recommend if you're working in a certain resolution, say you're working in 1920 by 1080 HD resolution, I'm going to create a sequence here and say that I'm editing in a 1080 sequence, 30 frames per second here. And I'm going to, I just do this as a little trick that kind of sets up your composition a little bit quicker in After Effects. I'm going to do a new black video. Hit OK, drag and drop that into my sequence here. Drag that across and make that however long you want your animation to be. Let's say like 30 seconds is what we're going to do. I'd add like about 10 more seconds onto what you plan using so you have a little bit of extra. But I'm going to right click on this and just replace that with an After Effects composition. I'm going to bring up this window and ask where I want it to save. I'm going to put it under the arrow folder. Just call it arrow animation. And what it's done here is it's created a 1920 by 1080 30 frames per second timeline. So it sets it up your timeline the same if you're adding video to it. So it keeps everything in the same resolution and format. After that, I'm going to bring in, and actually after I do that, I can get this black video and just delete it. I use that just to create a composition from Premiere. And now whatever I do here in After Effects, it will update in Premiere as well. So it saves me having a step to export the video out of After Effects back to Premiere as well. So I'm going to go to my Finder. I'm going to grab a couple of different things here. I'm going to grab one provided by the viewer, this screenshot. If we open this up, it's a little animation of some airplane parts, I think. Yeah, airplane and systems. There you go. And what you want to look for online, there's a bunch of free clip art websites you can look through and find arrows. If you can find a PNG, PNG is something that recognizes an alpha channel. So I just double clicked on this. Let me go down here and show you. See these white and gray squares represent no signal here, so this will be see-through on this portion, and the only thing that will show is the arrow. So I've got this arrow that's a PNG that's been created here off of a clip art website, and I'm going to go to my screenshot here, and this is what we're going to do the animation on. The benefit of doing this in After Effects is we're going to animate the arrow through here, and then we're going to use that animation on this big flat sheet here and animate it on here to kind of keep up with the arrow, and I'm going to show you what I mean here. So first of all, I'm going to start on I'm going to grab my screenshot here. I'm going to create a composition, its own composition here. I'm going to drag it to this composition, drop it on there. And this one came across as 30 seconds. If you need to make it longer, you can actually go to the settings here. Composition, right click on it, go to composition settings, and change the length of time here if you wish. Okay. So I've got this in its own composition, and then I've got the composition that I sent over from Premiere. This one's 1920 by 1080, and this composition matches the resolution of the image that I'm using. So first of all, I'm going to do the animation on this little screen here, and then we're going to zoom up to it on our other composition. So let's do the animation first. I'm going to grab my arrow here, drag and drop it onto the screen. This is quite a bit of resolution here, but I'm going to grab the corner here, hold my shift, and zoom this down. I'm going to get this to kind of the size that I need it. I'm going to option and scroll up here, and I'm going to grab the edge of the arrow here and make it even smaller like this, and make it so it fits in the space. I'm not sure if this is going the right direction. I'm not sure. I'm not familiar with airplane parts and circulation or whatever, but I'm going to show you how to animate this arrow here. Let's say we're going to move this along this path here. So I dropped it in here. Now it's pointing this way, but we're going to have the arrow pointing this way here. So I'm going to hit W for rotation and grab this, and I'm going to hold shift, and it will do it in 45-degree increments and lock it right there. So I did a 180-degree turn there. By the way, if you don't want to see these guides over the arrow there, you do on a PC it's Control Shift H, on a Mac it's Command Shift H. Will hide. If you remember that toggle, you can hide that on and off. Right now this looks like it's low res, but when you go to the main composition, we're going to show you how to make this look like it's higher resolution here. Now we're going to animate this arrow. So first of all, I'm going to play in, let's go in to this composition like about 1 second is where we want this to start. So I'm going to hold down Shift and do page down. It'll jump by 10 frame increments. I'm going to do it 3 times, and right there, Shift page down 3 times, and now we are 1 second in. So now I'm going to arrow down here the arrow and bring down the transform, and we're going to bring up on our keyframing options here. First of all, at this point, I'm going to add a keyframe for my position to begin. Click right there. It's added a keyframe, and I'm going to move this however many frames I want this to last here. Let's say I want this animation, I want it to go from here to here in about half a second. Let's do it in 20 frames. I'm going to do Shift, page down, that's 20 frames right there. I'm going to add another keyframe. Click right there to add. And it's add another keyframe 20 frames down, but it's in the exact same position. So now what I can do is grab the horizontal position here and scroll this over till I get it to the point where I want it to stop. Right about there. Now I'm going to have, at this point, do a quick rotation. So I'm going to add a rotation keyframe. So from here to here, does the animation from here to there. Actually, this looks like it kind of changes elevation. This is slightly on a slant. So I'm going to get this here, and I'm going to actually move this arrow on that keyframe right about there. So it kind of goes, because this is a little bit diagonal, a little bit from that schematic. So on the rotation, I'm going to go down about, let's say 3 frames. 1, 2, 3. I hit page down 3 times, and it went 3 frames. Shift page up or page down, it skips 5 frames at a time. And now I'm going to, let's go 4. One more, 4 frames. And now I'm going to rotate this arrow here. Grab it down here and rotate. And we're going to hit, that's going to hit 90 degrees right there. Another way to rotate, let me undo that and show you. Another way to rotate is to hit W, that's your rotation tool. And right now I've got my sideways arrow selected. It doesn't have the wireframe around it. You can grab this and just start moving up, and notice it rotates up or down. If you hold down Shift, it does it in 45 degree increments. There we go. And now I'm going to hit V for my regular arrow tool. Actually, let's hit H for hand, and I'm going to grab my canvas and move it over here. Right there, and V for my regular tool. So now let's take a look at what we've got so far. So right now the arrow moves across, boom, and rotates really quick. Right at the end of the rotation, I'm going to hit these little land on keyframe. Let me zoom up on this so you can kind of see what's happening here. But I'm going to land on the end keyframe of my rotation here. There's some other things you can do. You can make the arrow actually bend and curve. That gets a little bit complex. You have to do some morphing things, and it's a little complex. So this is kind of a little bit more simplistic explanation, but it's pretty functional. So I'm going to add a keyframe, a starting keyframe for my position there. I'm going to go, let's say we want this to travel up there in 10 frames now. That's about half the distance as the previous one. So I'm going to hold down Shift, page down, and I'm going to add another keyframe there. You don't have to even add that. If you grab this and move it, it's going to add a keyframe for you. So either way, I'm going to add a keyframe right there. I'm going to grab this. And if you move it up and you hold down Shift, it'll lock it to its vertical position. And move it up right where I want it, right about there. And now I'm going to add my rotation keyframe there. And 1, 2, 3, 4 frames over, page down 4 times, and add another rotation. And now I'm going to hit W for my rotation tool and grab this, hold down Shift so it locks it right there. And now I'm going to add a position keyframe there to start it. That's where it's going to start the next position movement. And hit H for hand, move this over. V for my arrow. And now where do I want this to end? I want it, that's going to be 20 frames down again. Shift, page down, page down, page down. 3 times is 1 second later, actually. So let's try 1 second here. I'm going to add another keyframe. Hit V for my arrow tool. Grab this and start dragging it over. Hold down Shift to lock that to its horizontal position. And right there, but notice it's a little bit on a slant, so I'm going to grab that and move it up so it does a little bit of a diagonal move. So let's see what we've got so far. So let's go home. I'm going to zoom this out. And let's watch, and let me hit Shift, question mark, will show the whole canvas. And now I'm going to zoom up on this just a little bit, Option and scroll, and watch the animation here. There it starts, moves, turns, And there you go. And same process. Up here you're going to have it rotate. Let's do one more rotation here. So I'm going to land on the keyframe where the position ends, right there. Let's zoom up on this so we can see what we're doing. Add a rotation keyframe. And we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4 down for the typical rotation down. And now grab W, Shift, and rotate. Oops. W, rotate that arrow up. Gotta zoom up to it closer. Right there, Shift. There we go. And one more position. Let's have it end up right here. Add a keyframe there. And I'm gonna go Shift 1, 2, have it go 20 keyframes or 20 frames. Grab that arrow, move it up, hold down Shift while I'm doing it to lock it to the vertical position, and ends there. And then you can do a rotation again. So this is what we have so far. So on this full schematic right here, the X is a composition. We see the arrow move up, move across, move up, and there you go. And you can have that move wherever you want to. Okay, now for the part to kind of zoom in on this and follow this. We're going to put it into our 1920 by 1080 composition. We're going to grab our composition here, our screenshot composition, and I'm going to drag it and drop it into our 1920 by 1080 composition. So if we play this, you'll notice after a second here, the arrow starts moving, and it's playing that composition within this composition. Let's save that. Okay, so now let's do this. I'm going to hit W, and I'm going to rotate my whole canvas here. I've got it on. I got holding down my Shift, so it locks it to 45 degrees here. I'm going to grab my corner here, hold down Shift to zoom this up. I'm going to zoom that up there. Move this over to where we can see that arrow. I'm going to actually bring down the controls here. I'm going to bring down the transform controls, and I'm going to grab the scale. I'm going to scale up on this. I'm going to move this over so it starts right there. Now, you're going to notice that we lose some resolution on that timeline there. If you click this little rasterize star right here on this composition, it will bring it to the actual resolution of that arrow there. Now you see that just got all kind of fine and clean. This resolution isn't as clean because it's kind of a compressed image. But now notice within this 1920 by 1080, now we can animate this map here and follow that arrow wherever it goes. So if we start here, and right here the arrow starts moving about 1 second in. Once that arrow starts moving, we want to animate up. So now I'm going to animate this whole canvas on the animated screenshot. So I'm going to animate with that arrow there. So now I'm going to click Position, Play, get it to where it kind of ends there, and grab this and move it to right there. So now it goes from here to here, and now watch what happens. It animates our canvas and follows the arrow. As the arrow moves over, I'm going to add another keyframe here and have it start animating up to that point right there. I'm trying to kind of keep the arrow kind of in the middle. So now the arrow moves up, moves over, moves up, moves over. There we go. Let me put another keyframe here. And there we go. And a couple of other things we can do to make this look a little bit more natural. You notice as we play, it looks a little stroby. So some things we can kind of do to fix that up there so it doesn't look as stroby is, let's do this. We're going to go to our animation here under our animating of the full screenshot here. And I'm going to actually grab all these keyframes, and I'm going to right click on them, do keyframe assistant, and we're going to hit easy ease. This will ease into those keyframes and ease out of them. So they seem a little softer instead of so hard edged. They'll kind of gradually slow down. See how it gradually slows down, gradually speeds up, and gradually slows down. And there we go. Actually, let me go to this last keyframe. I didn't move that one over, and we're going to move that over. So there we go. Okay, so after I'm done with those keyframes there, what I'm going to do now is I want this arrow looks a little bit stroby here. So I want to add a little bit of motion blur to make it look a little more natural. So I'm going to go back to my screenshot composition. So I'm on the original image here. And I'm going to turn on my I'm going to enable motion blur for the entire comp here, and I'm going to enable the sideways arrow line right there. Sideways arrow, and I'm going to go back to my arrow comp now, and I have to turn on my motion blur for this entire composition. First of all, look what happens when this thing's in motion here. Watch the arrow when I click the motion blur. Look what happens when I turn on the motion blur here. Click that. Notice it adds some blur to it when this arrow is in movement. When it's held still, there's no motion blur. When it's in movement now, it looks blurry as if it is in motion. So if we play through this now, we animate it, you're going to see that motion blur there. And it looks a little bit more natural. Looks like it's kind of speeding along there. And we can kind of show the flow of this. And it does it when it gets up to a certain speed, when it gets moving fast enough to create motion blur, like right there, and it looks a little bit more natural. Okay, so once we're done there, I can hit Command S and save, or Control S on a PC and save. And we go back to Premiere, and everything that we've done in there will have updated. You might have to render this though. You can just hit Return, and it will render your full After Effects composition. And when the After Effects composition is rendered, then it will play back. Let me cancel that and just do a portion of this here. Right there. And let's render this and take a look at it. So now I play through this. And there we go. And there's our animation.